Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Divorce-a-Palooza. What I want to talk about in this episode is that divorce brings significant change to you, change to your kids, maybe change to your living situation, maybe change to your professional life. Maybe you're getting a different job or going back to work. And what I want to talk about today is one thing that I believe will benefit kids tremendously, and that is having stability and the least amount of change as possible, even though they're probably going to have a lot with the divorce and everything. But one thing you can do, so before you turn this off in disgust and say, like, no way, I'm never doing this, is you can share a nanny with your ex. So, to talk about this is Brynn Ungerleider. Brynn is the founder of Premier Nanny Network. And Brynn, I'm so excited to talk about this with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. I could talk about this for hours, so please feel free to reel me in at any time, but I'm excited to be here.
So I want to tell everyone who's watching that Bryn has been babysitting since she was a teenager, absolutely loved kids then, still loves kids now, and decided to start Premier Nanny Network a couple of years ago to help parents find nannies, caregivers, mothers, helpers, babysitters, whatever you need. And what sets Bryn apart, this is what I think about you, Bryn, is that you truly keep the kids in mind at all times. Like you're just a kid lover and it's extremely important to you.
Absolutely. I always want to make sure that in any situation, the children are being put in the front, in the forethought of whatever decision is made, because at the end of the day, divorce really affects them.
Okay, so the article that you wrote for Divorce Girl Smiling is five benefits of divorced parents sharing a nanny. And don't you agree with me that some people who are watching this are like, I don't want to share a nanny with my ex. I don't ever want to interact with him again. I can't stand him. I want to have at least the least amount of contact as possible. So tell my listeners, I'm going to list off each reason why sharing a nanny with your ex can benefit you and the kids. And Bryn, you explain why, as you did in this article. Okay, so the first one, as I said at the beginning of this, is stability and consistency for the kids.
This one is such a big point, especially if you don't want anything to do with your ex, if it's a volatile separation or if it's just not going well trying to co-parent. Your nanny can actually step in as that neutral party and provide that consistency between both households, making sure your children have all of the resources, love, compassion that they need, whether they're at your house or your ex's house.
Oh my gosh, I love it because you're right. The nanny, she or he, but usually
Mhm.
she, has the best interest of the kids.
Yes.
So, of course, she can step in and like give me an example of how a nanny can benefit the kids in this way.
Well, in my experience, when I was a nanny for divorced households, many times the children would confide in me about the things, the overwhelming feelings, or the things that were really digging at them that they weren't scared to go to their parents, but they just felt intimidated because of the aggression or the nature of that separation didn't make them feel like they could approach their parents at that time. And so in many instances, I had children confide in me feel big emotions, big feelings that they were having during this entire change and how to kind of move forward with it. And with their blessing, of course, I would always approach the parents and say, "Hey, your daughter told me today that she's feeling very overwhelmed by the change. She's feeling very distraught over how you are talking about her dad and things like that." And so it can really open a dialogue that may not have been open before because your children are really trying to navigate this drastic change in their life, and it really does take a toll on them. And so a nanny is a really wonderful person to have there who can be available to these children for them to open up to.
Now, when these kids said this to you, were you nervous about telling the parents what they said? And how did the parents react? Were they like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Thank you for telling me," or what? How was that?
Absolutely nervous because, being a nanny, that was my job, that was my livelihood, and I was concerned at the time by opening up and sharing, this information that they may not wanna keep me around anymore, but it had the exact opposite effect. Making sure that it was okay with the child first because I didn't wanna break that trust with our relationship, but then after speaking to the parents as a neutral party, I remember they looked at one another, because we were doing, the exchange, and they looked at one another like, "We could be doing a better job." And I think it really opened the door for them to kinda see that it's not just the 2 of them, it's also their children that are in the mix, and I think it's really easy for that, detail to be kind of looked over because there's so many moving parts in divorce, there's so many moving parts in exchanges between the households, and so at the end of the day, it ended up being a really positive outcome. And I think that, even to this day, I still keep in touch with that family. And they're just grateful that I was able to help bridge the gap of communication and kind of bring some things to the surface that maybe they were either overlooking or they didn't really want to look at.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Another thing I just thought of that is such a benefit of sharing a nanny with your ex is that you could hear from the nanny what's going on at the ex's house. And I mean that in a good way because sometimes divorced couples don't want to talk to each other.
True.
So the nanny can say, "Hey, we went to the park. We did this." The nanny can give you full details and tell you a 15-minute story about what your kids did at your ex in a good way, whereas
Yes.
your ex is going to be like, "Yeah, it was fine." Right?
Absolutely. And then there's also that added benefit, in this situation, that their son had forgotten his soccer cleats at the ex-husband's house. And the ex-husband, of course, didn't want his wife or anybody at the house, but I could go. So I went and picked up those cleats, and there wasn't any other further commotion about it because I had access to both households. So it's definitely instances like that where it's really beneficial to have us as a neutral party between households.
All right, now I have to ask this. Did the couple complain about each other to you?
Yes, of course. Of course they do, especially, that transfer at the end of the weekend or when, the kids were coming back and forth and, the backpacks were filled or the clothes were brought back dirty, and there's always a little bit of frustration, and having the time to look back on it now is very different than when I was in that moment, and I think in the moment, it was kinda like, "Well, we'll just take care of it, and it's no big deal," but looking back on it, I could just tell that there were so many more emotions involved in that situation that is easier for me to see now, and it makes so much sense. And despite them complaining about one another, I always made sure to keep it light and fun and make sure the children never heard because that's who suffers at the end of the day because they are half your ex, whether or
Now
not you like that.
now, Bryn, it sounds like you were a really good nanny for a divorced family. Do you train your other nannies this way? Your nannies who you're placing in these homes?
That's a great question. I am working on a training program currently. However, I have been so blessed with the nannies that I do network with in my 20 plus years of being in this industry that many of them have also nannied for divorced families or children with special needs in divorced families, which I see a lot of. And I'm just finding that a lot of us are in this industry because of how much we genuinely care and how authentic we are. And I think that, you can hire a CPA to do your taxes. You can hire a bookkeeper to do all of your accounting and everything. Why wouldn't you hire an expert to help you with your children? And a lot of the nannies that I network with are utmost professionals. They are very skilled. They have a lot of credentials, background, education, and a lot of them are coming over from the teaching career as well. So they are already kind of experiencing some of this just from working in classrooms. So for
Love
those
it.
that for those that don't, I do have longer conversations with them because I want to make sure that they're given all the keys to be successful. Because it's at the end of the day, as much as I would love to be successful, it comes back to the children and making sure they're going to be well cared for. You know, have consistent, reliable, loving care by someone that's very empathetic and that's there for them constantly.
And I think a lot of these nannies, if they do truly love kids, a lot of this stuff probably comes naturally to them. Like they want to
Absolutely.
keep it light. They don't want to make problems because they know that if the parents aren't getting along, the kids are going to suffer. So, really,
Hmm.
really nice. So, do you service all over the states? You can help people find a nanny anywhere?
Anywhere in the country, and I hope to expand to Canada and the UK maybe in the next year or 2 is my goal.
All right. So basically, let's do a couple more of these before we run out of time.
Sure.
Reduce parental stress and improved co-parenting through simplified schedules,
Yes.
facilitating cooperation, and enhanced communication. Tell me what a nanny does in that regard.
Well, just as I've already touched on before, in my situation with not being able to have the ex-wife go to the house to get those soccer cleats, that was a really big ordeal. It could have been a very dramatic interaction for everyone if a nanny wasn't involved because they would have spent half their day trying to figure out how to get these cleats to their child who just needed them for soccer. I think that the biggest benefit for having a nanny to have a healthy co-parenting relationship is that neutral person in between both households. It's also a wonderful way to make sure that when your children go to your ex's house, they're still following a similar routine than what is at your house and vice versa, and making sure that nothing's really slipping through the cracks. You don't have to constantly nag your ex. So and so has a doctor's appointment on Thursday. Do you remember the doctor's appointment? It's tomorrow. Are you going to remember to go to the nanny is going to have all of that taken care of. They're going to help you with your schedule. They're going to see things in advance. And especially if you're trying to focus on your career because you've recently divorced and you need to get back out in the workforce and start, making a living, the nanny can kind of help you keep that schedule for months ahead of time, depending on how organized you are. And
Oh my gosh.
even if you aren't that organized, they're really great about picking up last minute whatever you need done.
I love it. And then we have time for one more benefit, and I want to get to this because it's important.
Sure.
Cost effectiveness and financial efficiency. Tell me about that.
So that is a really big point in what I do. And so there's two different ways that I look at it. One way is I did the math on what a nanny can return to you in the matter of hours in a week. And from what I'm seeing on my end, even if you hire someone part-time or full-time, you're roughly going to be getting back anywhere from 20 to 50 hours of a week of time. And it's kind of coming back down to, as a parent, if you could have an extra 20 to 50 hours in your week where you're not doing these mundane tasks like laundry, meal prep, transitional management like homework and things like that after school, you get all that extra time to just be with your children. And I think after going through divorce, that's so incredibly vital for everyone's benefit and personal development as they continue to grow through this new change. In terms of actual finances, I can, help you find a nanny from anywhere, $1,000 a month if you want to just do a mother's helper to full time, full blown
Live
nanny.
in.
And
Live in.
live-in nannies, anything that really helps. I've also helped find household managers that can oversee multiple properties, staff members, depending on the scale of your operation in your household. And at the end of the day, it really comes back to how much would you pay to make sure your children are in safe, trustworthy, professional hands. And that's what I wake up and push myself to make sure I'm creating that space for every family that contacts me. Absolutely.
Bryn, I love it. I love what you do. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for talking to me today, and tell my listeners and viewers where they can find you if they want to talk.
Absolutely. You're welcome to go to my website, premiernannynetwork.com. You can email me at premiernannynetwork@gmail.com. And if you are struggling financially and you don't know if you can go through an agency, give me a call. I'm always happy to negotiate. And again, let's make sure your children are put as a priority moving forward through your divorce. And let's make sure they're getting the care and respect that they deserve.
I just love it. Thank you, Bryn.
Thank you.
And I want to tell everyone who's watching that you can also find Bryn in the trusted professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling, along with so many other wonderful, trusted, vetted divorce professionals. Just go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.